Testing 1, 2, 3. Testing, testing.
Okay. Did you say there were 2 more to come, Sophie? Ah, yes. Okay. Well, we're right on time, so we'll start off. So welcome everybody. This meeting is being live streamed and recorded, and because we've had some issues with the recording and the sound, we've actually got a couple of other backups happening as well. So there's a video camera, there's someone else has got a recording thing going, so you're being very well and truly covered tonight. And if for some reason the live streaming doesn't work, we will then upload the other recording. I'd like to acknowledge the original custodians of the land that we're meeting on and pay respects to their elders past and present, and to any of their ancestors who may be here with us, their descendants who may be here with us tonight. As councillors, we've all taken an oath to carry out our duties in the best interests of the people of Indigo Shire, and to do this in a fair and impartial manner. We are all committed to exercising the council's powers and functions to the best of our skills and judgment. So do I have any apologies and leave of absence? As Roberta Baker is on leave. Any other? Any declarations of conflict of interest? Okay, so we're about to go to open forum, but before we start, there are a number of very lengthy preambles before the questions, and under the local laws, I can't really allow those, so I'll ask you to get to the point, please, and ask the questions that are there. So the first one is David Valentine. You've got 3 questions there, David.
Yep, just 3.
So David, just before you start, your question 1 starts with really a comment. So if you would go down to, is council aware that, then that would get us to the question.
Okay, is council aware that it has not had and currently still does not have a system to identify changes to legislation that can affect or even restrain council functions and powers, such as federal legislation that commences with despite any law of state or territory?
Yes, so the good news is we actually do have a system that identifies changes to legislation. It's called Advent. And Indigo Shire it's a local government industry provider. It identifies key legislation changes each quarter, and then those changes are sent through to council and are then distributed through the organisation to review and action as appropriate. So would you like to go to, I think it starts, why did council block the erection of,
why did council block the erection of war graves for the 3 eligible and approved World War I Anzacs buried in unmarked graves accepted under the Defence Regulations 2016 Part 15 S81 war graves, despite having been informed of and subsequently acknowledging in writing a legal restraint from doing so?
So look, the best way I can answer that, David, is to say that from the information I've been given, that council did not block the erection of war graves at Carlisle Cemetery, and in fact there are 6 war grave memorials being unveiled by the Rutherglen RSL at the ceremony on Remembrance Day this year.
5.
Oh, I beg your pardon, 5.
1 last year.
Yes, that's correct.
There was a letter emailed to the applicant on the 14th of July.
Just hang on, is this a...
This is straight above that question, so it's pertinent to it. The sentence above it points out that there was a letter advising the applicant that they weren't proceeding.
Okay. Well, anyway, as I said, we haven't blocked the erection of war graves because there are 5 being unveiled on Remembrance Day.
Only because of me.
In Rutherglen.
Okay,
Good
3. Does the council have a plan? Oh, well, you just said that you've brought in Advent. Can you tell me when?
I believe it's been in the system. Yes, it's been an embedded part of the organisation.
Because I wasn't allowed to ask up here, why in the FOI did I ask for copies of that stuff, your policy, your structure, your system? Why was there no such documents?
Okay, so we'll take that one on notice, and you have asked your 3 questions. So if you submit that one in an email, we'll get that to you. Thank you. So the next one, that's David. The next person is, Matt Evans from Ericsson Australia on behalf of the NBN. Welcome, Matt.
Thank you. Thanks very much for the opportunity to ask a question.
Do you want to come up to the microphone, Matt, so that everything's streamed? Thank you.
Look, it's just a very brief question that relates to item 11.2 on the agenda, which is the telecommunications facility for NBN in Scott Street, Chiltern. It's a simple question. Is Council aware that there are approximately 450 premises designated to receive service in the coverage area of the proposed NBN facility?
And the answer is yes.
Excellent. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Alan Davis. Hi, Alan. How are you?
Thank you.
Go ahead.
Just a short one, Ian. Could you please supply the 16 projects that are ahead of Woolshed Road for us, please? Thank you.
Yeah, look, I can. I won't read them to you now, but I've got a list that I can provide you with, Alan.
Okay, thanks, Alan. And I think this is Sandra Williams. So, Sandra, again, I'll ask you to just read the questions themselves. Thank you.
It's to do with the disabled lift proposal outside of the post office.
Yep.
And it's to do with the Regional Building Surveying Services report. It gave 3 options and it assessed 3 options.
Yep.
I just wanted to know who was responsible for putting those 3 options up in the first place, and why were only 3 options found to be viable when there was a perfectly good one.
Yep.
So a lot of people thought as another one.
Okay, so Mark Florence, would you be able to answer that one? Who prepared that report? Thanks, Mark.
So Regional Building Surveying Services is not a council. So
I understand that.
We didn't ask anyone to prepare that report. So the 3 options came about, those particular 3 options came about following discussions with Australia Post, Human Rights Commission, who were involved at that time, about what other options could be explored other than to provide access for disabled people. There were a range of options considered, but the Australia Post agreed at that point to, under direction from the Human Rights Commission, to focus on those 3 particular ones.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Another question, Sandra?
Yes, I do have another question. It's about the matter of how these things are advertised, both by Heritage Victoria, which doesn't concern you, of course, but by the council. It seems that they're always normally just put as a classified in the back of a newspaper, or they have a poster, and in this case the poster was put inside the colonnade where admittedly disabled people can't find it anyway. I think there may be another one, but I'm asking why bureaucratic bodies cannot at least provide an illustration as there was online, because we're talking about people who are disabled, vision impaired and so on.
It's a good point. We just clarified that before. People can always get the full plans and the drawings and things from our council offices, and sometimes we're not able to just display posters, all over the place. So that's how they are available, and we are required to put them into the public notices in the paper as a text.
Yes.
Under the Act, yeah.
And you can't do any more than that?
No,
you can't
not in the
add
paper.
to that?
No, we couldn't put posters in the paper. It would be
not a poster, an illustration.
No, I think we're required. There's a standard there's a standard public
a bureaucratic
notice.
standard that can't be.
As we are in a bureaucratic organisation, yes, unfortunately. But we do make those drawings and plans available for people that want to see the proposals. Yeah.
I'm just saying that the people involved are elderly and not computer literate.
Yeah, understood.
And it's just a shame that these people don't have any better access in time.
Yeah.
Mm.
And I will note that the issue is being decided tonight.
Yes,
in the agenda.
Yes,
so
thank you.
Thank you. And there's questions here, and I think it must be from Robin McLeish. 3 questions. Hi, Robin.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. My first question relates to the Council's communication policy. The committee review document that's recently been issued states that information pertaining to the review process will be communicated using social media such as Facebook or the Council website, and I believe that more information is now being processed in this manner. How will this information be made available to residents who do not have a computer or are not computer literate?
It really ties in with what Sandra was asking too.
Yes.
We do have, we're very happy to provide things in hard copy. All people have to do is ring customer service and we'll make sure they get that.
Why aren't we putting these things in local newspapers? Most of us use the local newspaper as a source of information.
Thank you, Robin. Another question?
That
is a question?
Why aren't we putting it in local newspapers?
We do have, every week we have a little section in the paper, and it's extremely expensive to make it any bigger than that, so we try and put as much as we can into it, but clearly we can't put every activity of council into that half a page, which costs many thousands of dollars a year to do. So we do try and make things available by hard copy.
Second question is about the service station footpath replacement. Council has budgeted to spend $20,000 to replace a short section of footpath in front of the Beechworth service station. Will the service station owner make a contribution, and will the work undertaken be restricted to the replacement of a standard section of footpath as specified in the council construction manual?
So I can assure you that the service station has made a significant contribution.
Why isn't it in the budget then that there's a contribution from a third party?
Ian Ellett, do you want to respond to that? And to this, whether it's a standard footpath specified in the construction manual?
Yeah, look, I guess because these works have been a couple of years in the making, so I think the arrangement that's been made with the service station owner wasn't in place at budget time, so council made an allocation, and probably at that time we didn't understand the full scope of works, what they would cost and what the cost sharing arrangement would be. So I think that's the reason that the other components aren't included in the budget. But in answer to your question, as the Mayor has stated, yes, there's a significant contribution by the service station owner, which we think is fair for those part of the works. The other part of your question, I guess, relates to, I think, the standard and the scope of the work. So the works are broader than just footpath. There's footpath, there's drainage works, there's works to improve the vehicle accesses into the property, and works to the service road outside. So it is a far broader scope of works. But I think your question is about, does it meet the normal standards of works that we would adhere to? And the answer is yes.
Okay, thank you. Next question.
The question was more related to containing the council commitment to the footpath, and a footpath at 75mm concrete, and so, any change to that to be the responsibility of the service station owner. Are we going to get some information on it in terms of what the service station owner has contributed?
I think we can provide that to you. We can give you that information, Robin. Yeah, take it on notice.
That would be good.
Okay, and your third question?
And the third question is the rail trail grant.
Yep.
Is council able to provide copies of the grant application for the Beechworth to Yakandanda rail trail? The information displayed at the recent presentation at Wirrajee identified an NPV of the order of $30 million. I assume that the grant application would provide indicative numbers of cyclists, duration of stay in the Shire and spending patterns.
Yes, so that grant was awarded based on a thing called the NEVCO report, which is the North East Victorian Cycling Optimisation Report, and that is available online, but I can get you I've got a hard copy, I'm happy to give it to you, and that outlines all of that information, so I'm very happy to give that to you.
And it has got the net present value calculation in it?
Yep, and the, estimated benefits with tourism and numbers and how long they'd stay and all that sort of stuff, all of the business cases in there.
Thank you very much.
Yep, very happy to give it to you. So can I get that on notice to give to, make sure Robin gets that? All right, so thank you everyone for your questions, and we're now moving to condolences. I do have an announcement tonight, or a condolence that I would like to offer on behalf of Council to the family, friends and Wangaratta community at the passing of Councillor Ruth Amory. Councillor Amory was elected in the 2016 Victorian local government elections to the Wangaratta City Council's City Ward, followed her passion for arts when she was appointed to the Arts, Culture and Heritage portfolio. She was a strong advocate for the work undertaken at the Wangaratta Art Gallery, and in particular the Contemporary Textile Award, and immersed herself in understanding the difference art and culture can make to people's lives. She was a steadfast supporter of the community and a vibrant and friendly person to all. She will be sorely missed. So my recommendation is that a letter of condolence under seal is sent to the family of Councillor Ruth Amory and the Wangaratta City Council to recognise her passing. Do I have someone to move that recommendation?
I'm happy to move that, Madam Mayor.
Oh, thank you. Councillor Gaffney, and seconded by Councillor Murdoch. All those in favour? Thank you. So, Narelle, I'll pass that over to you. Thank you very much. Do I have confirmation of the minutes from the previous meeting? So the recommendation is that the meetings of the Ordinary Council meeting, minutes, I beg your pardon, of the Ordinary Council meeting held on the 26th of September 2017 as published on the Council's website be confirmed. Do I have someone to move that motion? Councillor Shepherd, seconded.
Just in business arising, Councillor Goldsworthy.
Okay, thank you. All those in favour? Thank you. So, in business arising from the previous minutes, are there any issues? Yes, Councillor Gaffney.
At item 10.5 of the September meeting of Council, there was a question asked regarding consulting residents of Old Chiltern Road regarding the laying of sewerage pipes along that road. The CEO took that question on notice.
Thank you. Does there need to be any follow-up from that?
I'll refer this to Director of Infrastructure. So there was a response given, and we'll get that response now, and then we'll include that in the minutes for this meeting.
Okay. Are you satisfied with that, Councillor? Okay, thank you. All right.
He's about to give the response now.
Oh, you are? Go. Sorry.
Okay, so if I can start by referring back to the questions taken on notice at the last meeting, and there was a follow-up the following day where we did hear from North East Water, and there was an email sent to all councillors that was omitted from sort of going out in the current agenda, and that was fairly brief. That read that from Roberta Baker, I've just received a call from the Communications Unit of North East Water to clarify the situation in relation to Old Chiltern Road. I'm advised that their preferred route is Old Chiltern Road, but it is not even gone to the board yet, or to the North East board yet. They're contacting people in that road and will consider a door knock on Friday, so that was leading up to the Friday public holiday. So we felt at the time that provided a response to the questions raised, and then there is a further update. Across the course of the last couple of weeks we've had further updates from North East Water, so happy to distribute those outside of here, but quite a lengthy one to read out.
Okay, thank you. Happy with that? Thank you very much. All right, there were no questions taken on notice from the last meeting, and there's no deputations and petitions. So item 10, Corporate Services, 10.1, the September Performance Report. The Director of Corporate Services, the Acting Director is Delene Voigt. Welcome, Delene. Are there any questions for Delene about the performance report? Yeah, Councillor Goldsworthy.
I do have one just on the Capital Works Monitor, the component of that report, that's all. On page 4 of the Capital Works program, so 4 of 8, it just talks about the water bubbler installation. I was curious as to where we're up to with that. It's $15,000, it hasn't commenced yet. When are we likely to see some water bubblers?
Yes. Okay, so Director of Infrastructure is going to answer that one.
Thank you. Now, I haven't actually got that part of the report in front of me, so I'm not sure what was said. But I guess the way we're evaluating that, and it did fall to Jenny Pena, who's recently departed the organisation, so she was coordinating the prioritisation. So the water bubblers in our council plan is an initiative that we've got marked across the 4 years. So we saw the allocation in the current budget as very much the starting point. So rather than rush out and pick 2 locations, what we wanted to do was work up a bit of a priority program so that we could go ahead with the initial installations but have some real clarity to the forthcoming budget. So we've lost a bit of momentum there with the departure of Jenny recently, but we'll keep moving on that and be able to update council in the coming weeks and months.
Okay. All right, any other questions? So the recommendation is that council accepts the July to September 2017 Finance and Performance Report. Do I have someone to move that? Councillor Trenery. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Murdoch. All those in favour? Pass, thank you. 10.2, the Annual Performance Report 2016-17, the Projects and Advocacy. The recommendation is that council notes the organisation's performance against the Capital Works Program, Advocacy Plan and Council Plan Action List for the 16-17 financial year and approves the amount of $2,202,378 to be carried forward from the 2016-17 financial year to the 17-18 financial year to enable the completion of budgeted capital works projects, and notes in relation to projects on non-Indigo Shire assets, which include the Waganya Men's Shed, Lake King revitalisation and Barclay Park building upgrade, that there are unexpended funds from 16-17 and that unbudgeted expenditure will be incurred in 17-18 to complete the remaining works. Do I have someone to move that as a motion? Yes, certainly.
Thank you. So my question relates to page 27 of the document, and it's the third dot point down. It's around yak track section and signage. It says feasibility study on the possible extension to the Beechworth is progressing. So I'm just wondering, for the mountain bike trails, what does that actually mean?
So, Director of, let me get it right, Development and Community Services, Mark Florence.
So the success of the yak tracks mountain bike park has been far better than we ever expected it to be, and I'm sure the community group would agree. And from that, there has been a demand or an interest in extending those trails from Yakandanda to Beechworth. And through council's budget, there was an allocation to conduct a feasibility around the most appropriate route, creating some railheads, some parking areas, and whether that would add to the cycle mix across the Shire, but also across the region as part of a broader tourism approach. So that feasibility is just about completed and will be presented to council over the next couple of months.
Okay, so you're happy to move the motion. Do I have a seconder? Oh, yeah, of course. Councillor Shepherd. Oh, sorry, Councillor Price. Too close together. Yeah, go ahead.
I just think if you actually take the time to read this report, then it highlights a lot of good things that the council's achieved over the years. And I think of the year, and it's really important to note that I think the staff have done a terrific job. And it shows that we can't rest on our laurels, but we've just got to keep going through it. But I commend the staff for what they're doing and the acting CEO, and thank them very much for their diligence.
Thank you, Councillor. Anyone else wish to speak to the motion? Councillor Price, no? Okay, so I put the motion. All those in favour? Passed. Thank you. 10.3, the Audit Committee Charter, and the recommendation is that council adopt the attached Audit Committee Charter. Moved by Councillor Gaffney. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Price. Do you wish to speak to it?
I do. That's right, Madam Mayor. Was it section 139(1) of the Local Government Act mandates council to establish an audit committee. To audit is to inspect, examine, survey, scrutinise, probe, vet, investigate and check into. It's essential for council to have an audit committee. We have a committee that is well qualified and experienced in matters of finance and risk management. This charter covers all of those items.
Thank you. Councillor Price, do you wish to second the motion or to speak to the motion?
Only to add one comment to Councillor Gaffney's comments that this charter is based on the best practice guide. Audit committees are guide to good practice for local government.
Yep, thank you. Anyone else wish to speak to the motion? I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Carried. Thank you. 10.4 is the Audit Committee remuneration. So in line with obviously having an audit committee, we have to pass the fees that they receive. So the recommendation is that Council maintain the current payments to the audit committee members as follows. The chairperson is to receive $450 per meeting, other independent members to receive $250 per meeting. The independent audit committee members be reimbursed for their travel expense for attending audit committee meetings at the same rate as staff and councillors. And the council review the audit committee remuneration every 2 years thereafter at the March council meeting. So the next review is due in March 2019. Do I have someone to move that motion? Councillor Gaffney, a seconder. Councillor Price, do you wish to speak to the motion?
Just very briefly, section 139(7) of the Local Government Act says that council may pay a fee to members of the audit committee who are not councillors or council staff. As I've said before, the independent members of the Indigo Audit Committee are well qualified and experienced in financial and risk management. I think 3 of the 4 independent members are qualified accountants, at least 2, and the others are certainly experienced in business and audit. Some travel large distances and they should be compensated.
Okay. Councillor Price, do you wish to add to that?
Just to say that these figures are in line with neighbouring shires of a similar size.
Yep. Okay, so I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Oh, sorry, Councillor Shepherd.
I'd just like to say I'm not a member of this committee, but I go along because they're great committees. It's a really well-run committee, and I find out some really interesting things. So I'm really pleased that we've got an audit committee that's of such high standard. And I'd just like to thank Jo Barker, who's been the chairperson for the last 2 years, and congratulate Kay Thorley, who's now the chairperson, and I'm sure she'll do a great job.
Okay, thank you. So I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Carried. Thank you. Item 10.5, Council Advisory Committee Minutes. The recommendation is that Council receives the attached unconfirmed Advisory Committee minutes and endorses the officer comments. So that's all attached in the report. Do I have someone to move that motion? Councillor Murdoch, sorry? Sure. You can ask questions. Go ahead.
Sorry. Some of the recommendations that were in the documents that we actually received from the committees, and just trying to find it. Sorry, just looking for my questions. The result of the site inspection of the Beechworth pool from the Trees Committee that attended there. It's on page 158 of 495.
Yeah, so I'm on that committee. There was a recommendation from our arborist, I think, to remove quite a large tree down at the Beechworth swimming pool because of the leaves that were getting into the pool. But on balance, the committee decided that the benefit of the shade, etc., and the amenity of having the tree there was outweighed by the problem with the leaves. So it's decided to leave that tree there for now. And I think there's going to be some further looking into what could be planted as a succession planting down there.
Thank you. And the current situation with disabled access to the Burke Museum, that's from the Burke Museum Committee. It's on page 161.
Anyone want to speak to that from that committee? Is anyone here from that committee? Yes, Barb, do you want to...
Look, there's been quite a few... There has been quite a few suggestions on how we can fix the access to the Burke Museum, and one of the suggestions has been to come in the back way and to have a level playing field coming that way is also close to the toilets as well, which are for disabled people as well. It's on the deck now and being discussed, and we really want to thank the committee for giving us the options, and hopefully we will get them through.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? Hang on. I think Councillor Goldsworthy, and then I'll get to you, Councillor Murdoch.
So I just got one more question from that committee, and it was on page 165. It relates to the potential for having Beechworth Township included on the National Heritage List. I'm just wondering what the implications would that be and where we go from here.
So through the Chair, being registered on the National Heritage is something that our Heritage Advisor is investigating. We're still to learn the detail of that. There can be some limitations in terms of what Council is able to do in a particular area on a particular building if we are registered. But similarly, there are some opportunities if we do have some significant buildings registered under the national scheme, which can create some opportunities for grants and other programs which highlight those particular buildings. So we'll learn more about that over the next couple of months.
All right. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Just like to say thanks for the committees for all the work that they do. There's some good recommendations out of there.
Yep, thank you. Councillor Murdoch.
I'm still on. I would just like to say that we've at the Burke Museum, David Lawrence, who has been the chair, has stepped down from the advisory committee and the role of the chairman. And I was going to read out a piece of my own, but when I read what has been said here, I think it speaks well to David. As chairman of the advisory committee, David has generously volunteered his time and expertise. During David's tenure as chairman, the advisory committee provided considerable support to the Burke Museum and Historic Precinct Manager, which was deeply appreciated. The Burke Museum's profile programs and exhibitions have evolved and advanced during David's tenure, and collaboration and support provided to the manager from the advisory committee was critical to this evolution. David's calm and intelligence has been a significant asset to the committee, and it is a pleasure to acknowledge the large number of positive developments which have occurred during David's tenure, including conservation of the Chinese banners, disability access, Ned Kelly Vault, the Indigenous Collection Repatriation Program, and many more. We wish David the very best, and we miss his exemplary chairmanship. And I do hope he has a more calmly time in his retirement.
Okay. Thank you. So, Councillor Murdoch, would you like us to write a letter of thanks on behalf of Council?
I would appreciate it if you could.
Okay, well then I'll add that into the recommendation because we need to make it a part of the motion. So the motion now reads that Council receives the attached unconfirmed advisory committee minutes and endorses the officer comments, and 2, that we write a letter of thanks to David Lawrence for his work as the chair of the Burke Museum and Historic Precinct Advisory Committee. Do I have someone to move that motion? Councillor Murdoch? Yeah, okay, thank you. Second it. Councillor Goldsworthy. Anyone else wish to speak to this motion? Okay, I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Carried. And 10.6, Assembly of Councillor Records. The recommendation is that Council accepts the Assembly of Councillor Records. They're available online, attached to the agenda. Do I have anyone to move that motion? I need Councillor Price, and seconded Councillor Goldsworthy. Do you wish to speak to it? Councillor Price, Councillor Goldsworthy, anybody else wish to raise any issues? Okay, I'll put... Oh, sorry, Councillor Shepherd.
Hi, looking at the Indigo Economic Development and Tourism Advisory Committee, they do have each of the chambers give a report, and I know it just says chamber reports. I'm just wondering, is there an opportunity for the reports to be included, or... because they're usually pretty interesting, what's happening around the chamber, so I'm just wondering whether that could be added to the minutes.
Is that something we need to take a motion on, or can we'll just do that? Yep, cool, great. All right, I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Carried. Okay, item 11, 11.1. PP 0166, construction of disabled access to the Beechworth Post Office, Ford Street, Beechworth. So this recommendation has come that council refuses this planning permit application 170166 to construct disabled access to the front of the Beechworth Post Office in Ford Street, Beechworth on the following grounds. 1, the proposal is inconsistent with the state planning policy framework, particularly 15.3 heritage. 2, the proposal is inconsistent with local planning policy framework, particularly 22.039 heritage policy. 3, the proposal is inconsistent with the purposes of the heritage overlay. In particular, the changes would adversely affect the significance of the historic Beechworth streetscape. 4, the proposal is inconsistent with objectives of planning in Victoria, particularly to conserve and enhance those buildings, areas or other places which are of scientific, aesthetic, architectural or historical interest or otherwise of special cultural value and is inconsistent with orderly planning. 5, this proposal is inconsistent with advice from Indigo Shire's Heritage Advisor. And 6, this proposal would reduce the functionality of the pedestrian thoroughfare, present a permanent barrier on the footpath, which in itself would be a hazard to pedestrians. So I have someone to move that. Councillor Goldsworthy. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Gaffney, would you like to speak to that, Councillor Goldsworthy?
I would. I think this application totally disregards the heritage and tourism significance of the site and would be an additional encumbrance on the flow of pedestrian traffic. I think when you take a look at just by putting a red post office box out the front of the building close to a year ago, the consternation that caused, it's one of the premier photographic points in the Shire. And we needed to get that one moved. Putting that lift there would certainly be a blight on the landscape. I think if Australia Post was serious about providing disability access to the post office, they would actually consult with the local community, and that's what I'd like to see from here. So for that reason, I support this recommendation, this motion.
Councillor Gaffney.
The Beechworth Post Office would be the most photographed building, not only in Indigo Shire, not only in Beechworth, but in North East Victoria. It's a heritage building, very dear to the hearts of people in Beechworth and Indigo Shire. Australia Post had a number of options. Why they selected this option, I don't know. But the reasoning just doesn't make very much sense to me. There's been no consultation with Indigo Shire Council. There's been no consultation with the community, and people with a disability who I have spoken to are against this option.
Anyone else wish to speak to this? Councillor Trenery and then Councillor Shepherd.
I was just wanting to reiterate Council's determination in regards to access for people with a disability. We take it very seriously and have worked hard in the past to create solutions. Been on the Access Committee now for quite a few many years, and this certainly hasn't been mentioned as a solution. And I think on that committee, the heritage of this building is respected as well as everyone else. So I just want to say that we're committed to getting a solution, but this isn't it.
Okay,
thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Shepherd.
Look, I know that this is about disability, but I also think it's not helping with the access into that building anyway. Like it stops access into that building, and as someone, you know, who's had to handle prams and pushes and little children, like that's just going to be in the way anyway, and it's not an answer for anyone else who wants to access that building with, you know, might not be disabled, might have a walking frame, might have, you know, but won't be able to use that. So it doesn't sort of answer the access for everyone else as well as disability.
Yes, Councillor Price.
And I'd just like to point out the referrals that are mentioned in the document. It's been referred to Council's Assets Department, who objects to the proposal. It's been referred to Vic Roads, who objects to the proposal. It's been referred, as Councillor Trenery mentioned, to the Indigo Shire Community Access Committee, who rejects the proposal, to the Heritage Advisor, who rejects the proposal, to GHM Heritage, GJM Heritage, who also support the advice of the Heritage Advisor, and as Councillor Gaffney mentioned, the community also. So how Australia Post think that this can be a reasonable outcome is beyond me.
Thank you, Councillor. Would you like to sum up, Councillor Goldsworthy?
We would all like to see improved access to the post office, but this is not it.
Thank you. Okay, so I'm going to put the motion that Council refuses the planning permit application as I've outlined. All those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you, councillors. 11.2. This is planning permit 170154, telecommunications facility and NBN lattice tower in Scott Street, Chiltern. So the recommendation is that Council approves this planning permit to allow the development of the land for a telecommunications facility subject to the following conditions as written, and there are very, very lengthy pages of conditions, so I won't read them now, and to issue a notice of decision to grant a permit. Do I have someone to move that motion? Councillor Trenery. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Goldsworthy. Do you wish to speak to the motion, Councillor Trenery?
Obviously, this has been looked at, this permit. There's a lot of conditions in it. I understand there's some people that have concerns in regards to the visual part of it. That's been well and truly covered in this report. But the progress and NBN in these small towns is absolutely essential. I know we've got it in Yakandanda and we've had it for a little while, and it's not just about Netflix, although that's a very handy thing. It's about business as well. Businesses need the NBN to be in these areas, and this is the best access we can get. So I commend this to Council.
Okay. Councillor Goldsworthy, do you wish to speak to it?
I think for education, business and for social purposes, good internet access is critically important. It's something that comes up frequently whenever you're speaking to the community, and I believe this is a good start for Chiltern. So for that reason, I think we should support it.
Okay. Anyone else wish to speak to it? Yes, Councillor Price.
Just noting there were some objection, but I think it's important to see the basis for recommendation is acknowledging that the tower will be visible in the landscape to varying degrees and at different locations. The facility has been cited to minimise visibility with the surrounding environment. It is considered that on balance, the net community benefit provided by the facility weighs in favour of its approval in this instance.
Anyone else wish to speak to the motion? Do you wish to sum up, Councillor Trenery? Do you wish to add anything? Okay. All right, well, I'll put the motion. All those in favour of granting the application, approving the application, I beg your pardon. Carried. 11.3, this is the Q Springs Water Extraction Monthly Compliance Report. The recommendation is that Council notes the Q Springs Water Extraction Facility Monitoring Report content and the action undertaken where required. Do I have someone to move that? Councillor Gaffney. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Shepherd? Oh, sorry. Sorry about that. Do you wish to speak to it?
Just briefly, Madam Mayor, this went to the full bench of the highest court in Victoria last Thursday, and they've reserved their decision. It just shows what a serious issue this is to not just Stanley and Beechworth, but Indigo Shire and North East Victoria. There's a number of councils, Alpine, Tawong and Indigo, getting together to see what we can do about these things, but that is of course pending the full bench decision, which we hope is successful.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Shepherd, do you wish to add anything to that? Anyone else wish to speak to this motion? Okay, so we note the report. All those in favour? Carried. Thank you. Okay, so item 12.1 is the future use of the former Beechworth Library. So the recommendation is...
Just if I could...
Sorry?
Yes. I'd like to move a different motion, and that's that this recommendation or this topic be put off until a time convenient to the CEO in order to explore a number of issues that have been raised. If you want me to state those, they would be in relation to the proposed lease agreement, the period for that, and also the costings for the potential for full remediation of the site.
Okay, anyone want to second that?
I'm very happy to second that, Madam Mayor.
All right. Do you wish to speak to that?
So this is a comprehensive report, and it's enlightening in some regards, and certainly it's been something that's been spoken about over the years in Beechworth. What I'd like to see out of this are two things in addition to what's already here, and that's the proposed lease term was an initial period of 10 years. I just wasn't sure if that was was something that a commercial business would actually want, and so we'll discuss it with real estate agents to see whether that's viable or whether we put something else in there. And the other concern that I have is around the costings for the full remediation for the site. Whilst it does speak of it, it would be nice to get some indication. I appreciate that it would be difficult to get exact costings, but something that's more indicative, because in the long run, having to pay $20,000 to $25,000 per annum to get soil testing is going to be an expensive exercise for the Indigo Shire forevermore. So we need to do something differently.
Okay, Councillor Gaffney, do you wish to speak?
Just briefly, Madam Mayor, I realise that Council just can't sell this site. It's something that I think quite a few would like to see, but there are certainly issues. I'm not sure about the 10-year lease with an option of another 10, which makes it a 20-year lease. And there's other options, as Councillor Goldsworthy stated, that should be examined.
Anyone else wish to speak to that, the new motion? Okay, I'll put that. Oh, do you want to sum up, or you said enough? Okay, I'll put that motion that we defer the decision until the CEO has had time to look into. Can you read it again? Sorry, Councillor Goldsworthy. Or Narelle, have you got it there? Just read it.
So what I've written down is that this item be deferred to allow time to provide additional information on lease term and site remediation.
Okay. I'll put that. All those in favour? Okay, carried. Thank you. 12.2, the expression of interest for the Beechworth Railway Station building. So the recommendation is that Council conducts an expression of interest process for the short term, up to 3 years, use of the Beechworth Railway Station building, and endorses the assessment criteria set out in the report. And 2, a further report to be presented to Council following the EOI process and assessment by the selection panel to make a decision on the future use of the site. There was a third point there, but Councillors agreed not to include that in this motion. So does anyone want to put that motion? Yep, okay. And seconder? So Councillor Goldsworthy, seconded Councillor Murdoch. Do you wish to speak to that? Yes.
Just by way of explanation, the third dot point talks about the youth centre. We're in the throes of redeveloping our youth strategy. We have had some recommendations from the youth officer, but we need to look at those more closely. So I don't believe it's necessarily relevant to include that third dot point at the moment. So, and certainly for any future expression of interest, it will have to take into consideration the current users of the facility. So it would be good to activate the site more so than what it is. Hopefully the community will take this as an opportunity to put in an expression of interest like they did for the maternal health, the old maternal health building.
All right. Councillor Murdoch, do you wish to add to anything to that?
Yes, I think I agree with Councillor Goldsworthy that it is time that we got to and lease this building out, because like all towns, we have a shortage of space for often the community to use. So this will probably be well sought after, and it will be well used.
Anyone else wish to speak to the motion? Councillor Gaffney.
Just a couple of questions. Will the local residents be consulted before the EOIs come to council?
CEO.
We will put out an expression of interest. We'll receive those. The intent is to bring those expressions of interest back to council in the same way that we do in most of these processes, to get a council in principle support and then we would normally go to the community to gather their input after that. There's not usually a community consultation process until council has provided their in-principle direction.
Just on that, once the EOIs have been adopted by council, what's the point in consulting with the community once the decision's been made?
So as we did with the expression of interest process last time, we would seek council to provide their direction on a preferred expression of interest, and then we would consult on that one rather than consulting on any number of expressions of interest that may not have council support.
Thanks. And the other question is, when this went out as an EOI previously, the Beechworth Railway goods shed was included, but I notice it's not now.
Do you wish to comment on that?
So at the moment, the goods shed isn't in a state that would be suitable for community use, and it was felt that the inclusion of that into the EOI process may, I suppose, put off a group or an individual putting in an expression of interest in that they wouldn't necessarily have the capital or the ability to do anything with that goods shed. And so that's been taken off. If in the future we were able to activate that goods shed, we'd be very pleased to progress that as well. But at the moment it's seen as more of a liability than an asset.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, anyone else wish to speak to the motion? Councillor Goldsworthy, do you want to sum up? All right, so I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Carried, thank you. So 13.1 is the annual report from 2016-17. So I'd just like to say that before we put the recommendation, this is a very a good read if you want to see what council actually did in the last financial year. And while we often focus on the things that we don't do or we haven't got right, it's actually good sometimes to be able to reflect on some of the things that we have done, often in conjunction with the community. So I'd suggest you have a read of it. In the meantime, I'll put the recommendation that council considers and endorses the Indigo Shire Council Annual Report 2016-17 as required under Section 134 of the Local Government Act 1989. Do I have someone to put the motion, to move that? Yes, thank you. Councillor Price, do I have a seconder? Councillor Murdoch. Do you wish to speak to that, Councillor Price? Nope. Councillor Murdoch?
No, I think this is just the report of the things that we have. Do you want to turn that? I've got enough voice. It is a report of the year in past and of the successes and probably the failures that we've had. But it is a good read, and it's amazing how much work we actually do for the community and the things that have got done. So for anybody that wants to have a read, it's a good read.
Okay. You'd like to comment? Councillor Goldsworthy.
It does highlight a lot of what the council does, and I think if you look at the community perceptions of our performance, they're above state average in all criteria, and for small rural councils as well. Financially, we're in a brilliant position at the start of the financial year. Some of that's around timing of grant money, but we're still looking pretty good. And for the completion rate for our capital works, I think that in itself is also a fair assessment. So we are doing good things for the community. We do cop a lot of criticism, but for what might be our average rates of around about $1,500, the community gets a huge benefit, which potentially they don't recognise most of the time.
Okay. Any other councillors wish to blow our own trumpets? Councillor Shepherd.
I'm not blowing our trumpets. I just want us to look at the challenges of 2017-18, which we are looking at, and I think it's good that they're highlighted here. We talk about this a lot, that we have limited revenue through state government rate capping, that we've got to deliver key projects to meet funding milestones, the increasing community expectations within a constrained financial environment, improving communication, which we discussed tonight with one of the questions, consultation and service delivery, especially in the digital world, when some people don't have access to the digital world, higher level of competition for state and federal government grants, and enhancing mechanisms to improve tourism and industry engagement is just some of the challenges we face.
Okay, so in terms of the annual report for 16-17, do I have someone to, I do have someone to move it. Councillor Price, seconded by Councillor Murdoch. Anyone else wish to speak to that? Okay, I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Carried. 13.2 is the advocacy plan for this year, 2017-18. So the recommendation is that Council adopts the attached advocacy plan for 2017-18 and reviews the plan at the end of the financial year. Do I have someone to move that? Councillor Trenery, seconder. Councillor Murdoch. Do you wish to speak to that, Councillor?
Just in regards to this, I mean, it's a way for us to prioritise some of the things that are going on. We've obviously, the state government and the federal government have a lot of things, multi-million-dollar projects go over their desk, and we need to be organised and well prepared so when opportunities come up that we can take them. It's worked really well in the past, and obviously commend this to council so we can continue to be organised to maximise our opportunities.
Thank you. Councillor Murdoch, do you wish to add to that?
Yeah, I think it is great that if we're not organised and grants do come up, well then we scurry around trying to look for a place to put it, and that means that we'll often miss out and we're not prepared. This way we're prepared. We know that the federal and state governments need people that put in proper applications, and to be well prepared earlier is prudent, I think.
All right, thank you. Councillor Shepherd.
We note that Beechworth Secondary College needs extension and redevelopment, but we also, I think, need to add Rutherglen Secondary College to that list as well, which is as well in great needs when we're lobbying Minister for Education, yes, James Merlino. So could we add Rutherglen Secondary College to that list?
So, Narelle, have you got a note of that? Thank you. And Councillor Goldsworthy.
I'd just like to make note that this is an advocacy list for the moment. We do have a recreation plan that we're working on, and there'll be a lot of things that come out of that. There are other things that include the activation of our waterways and potentially some of the advocacy around mountain biking. That may come out over the next 6 to 12 months, and so it's a living document, and I'd imagine that once we tick a few of these projects off, it will change dramatically for next year. So if you've got anything out there that you want us to advocate for, by all means, let us know.
Okay, thank you. So I'll put the motion that we adopt the advocacy plan. All those in favour? Carried. Thank you. Item 14 are notices of motion, and we do not have any tonight. We do have an opportunity here for councillors just to briefly raise any issues that they might like to with the community, things that they'd like to report back on. Anything? Yeah, Councillor Gaffney.
I'd like to bring to council's attention the change in federal health funding for Waggunya, Rutherglen, Chiltern and Barnawatha, which means that I think from the start of next year that physiotherapy services will be nil. For places like Chiltern, with an ageing population who have hip replacements and knee replacements, it's just a no-brainer that they must have physiotherapy. And now they've got to get to either Wodonga or Wangaratta. There's no public transport, and I think that council needs to stand up and advocate, perhaps to the federal minister, perhaps to the CEO of Murray Primary Health Network, which is based in Bendigo. I don't know whether they realise the impact this will have on small rural communities.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. Do you want some action from that, an advocacy letter, or perhaps raise it at a briefing and we'll... No,
if council could write to the federal minister, I I know that Kathy McGowan's on board, but perhaps we could write to her and help her in some way, and particularly the CEO of Murray Primary Health Network.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Murdoch, did you want to raise something?
Yeah, on Saturday, I think it was, I went to the Victoria Chamber Orchestra at Rutherglen. They come up here to this area about once every 2 or 3 years, and they are a fantastic orchestra. They had 2 singers, a tenor and a soprano, who were absolutely fabulous. Anybody that saw them, you had the whole town hall rocking, and people were really appreciative of that. The other part, it's just a little bit of an ad, but Chiltern has theatre nights once a month, and those theatre nights, they often play older films and things like that, and the one coming up is Spit McPhee, so if anybody wants to turn up, and Spit McPhee was made in Chiltern, so that it's got a really home program on it. So if anybody wants to come, have a look up in the on the web and you'll find it, and
terrific.
It's an enjoyable night.
Thank you. Anything else from councillors? Councillor Shepherd.
Yes, I just wanted to congratulate Karen Van Heusen, who's our Community Recovery Coordinator, and the Indigo Valley Bushfire Community Committee, who've been named a finalist in the Fire Awareness Awards. And so they will be attending the finals in December, Monday the 4th of December, and it's a great little feather in our cap.
That's great. Anyone else? Yes, Councillor Price.
And I'd just like to commend the work of the staff that have been working, the staff and the council and the community who've been working with our consultant, Wendy Holland, on the Active Indigo program. It's being spoken of very highly at DHHS, as was reported at the last steering group committee meeting. So thanks to everyone that's had some participation in that, and hopefully it's a really good guiding document.
Okay, thank you. I would like to just give a brief update on Murray Goulburn, because while I don't think there's many people from Tangambalanga here tonight, obviously as part of our shire, this community has been very affected, and as many of you would know, Murray Goulburn is now selling to Saputo. That was announced on the weekend, so that really puts things back up in the air. The factory was scheduled for closure on the 3rd of June 2018, when they would stop processing the cream cheese, which is also the milk that is then fed into the Danone part of the operation, the yoghurt making. So there's been concerns about how that would all work when the factory closed. So we are now very hopeful that we can work with Saputo to get them to change that decision, and if not change it, then at least be willing to sell the asset to someone else who might be interested, and there are other interested buyers out there. So I guess I just want to put that on the record, that things are still in flux and in play, I should say, with the Kiwa plant for Murray Goulburn. And the other thing I'd just say is that on November the 23rd, we have Hugh Kingston coming to speak at an event that we're one of the sponsors for. Hugh was a driver for the bottled water free Bundanoon, so it was the first town in Australia to go plastic water bottle free. It's something that the Shire is looking at trying to encourage people to do. He's a very enthusiastic and inspiring speaker, so if people are interested in coming along, that will be at the George Kerford Hotel on November the 23rd. So that's just to give you a heads up on that. Okay, so there's also a copy here of my diary for July, which feels like one hell of a long time ago. What are we up to? October, November nearly. Any comments, any questions on that from anyone? Okay. And general business. Do we have any items for general business? Not tonight, we've covered everything off. Okay, well that brings us to the end of the meeting. Thank you very much for attending. The next meeting is on the 28th of November, and of course next week is Cup weekend, so enjoy the long weekend. Sorry?
Red Cardinal.
Red Cardinal. Oh, is that your tip? Red Cardinal, okay. Enjoy the Cup weekend, and we'll see you at the next meeting. Thank you for coming tonight.
Thank you.